February 26, 1991, 2:14 a.m., outside the burning oil fields of southern Iraq. The desert is alive with fire. Black smoke coils upward from sabotaged oil wells, blotting out the moon and turning the night into a choking twilight. Sand crunches under steel tracks as a column of American tanks moves slowly, deliberately across the flat expanse. Inside one of them, an M1 Abrams, Staff Sergeant Paul Ray Smith's loader grips a 120mm sabot round, knuckles white, sweat running down his back despite the cold desert night. 2 kilometers ahead, unseen in the darkness, Iraqi T-72 M1 tanks sit hull down behind shallow berms. Their crews are relaxed, confident. Some are smoking, others are joking over the intercom. They have been told these American tanks are overrated, too heavy, too complex. They've been told the Abrams burns fuel like water and breaks down in the sand. Soviet instructors laughed when they talked about it. Western propaganda, they said. Our armor is superior. Our guns are enough. Tonight, they are about to learn what 2,000 meters really means. Inside the Abrams, the gunner, Specialist David Hale, peers through thermal sights that turn darkness into glowing silhouettes. The smoke, the sand, the night, none of it matters. Heat is truth here. And suddenly, there it is. A white-hot shape, rectangular, low turret, a tank. Identified, T-72. Hale's voice is calm, almost clinical. The commander, Captain H.R. McMaster, doesn't hesitate. Sabot, tank, fire. The Abrams stops. Stabilizers lock. The loader slams the round into the breech. The turret hums as it aligns, not by muscle or guesswork, but by ballistic computer, laser rangefinder, and decades of engineering obsession. Range, 2,100 meters. The Iraqi tank crew never hears the shot. The 120mm smoothbore erupts, a blinding flash punching the night. The depleted uranium penetrator leaves the barrel at nearly 1,700 meters per second. Invisible, unstoppable. Less than 2 seconds later, it punches through the T-72's frontal armor like paper, igniting ammunition inside the turret. The Iraqi tank explodes from within. The turret lifts, twists, and slams back down in a shower of sparks and flame. In the Abrams, there is no cheering, just the mechanical calm of professionals. Target destroyed. And in the Iraqi line, laughter dies instantly. Hours earlier, Iraqi armor units believed they were prepared. The Republican Guard's Tawakkalna division, veterans of the Iran-Iraq War, had faced tanks before. They trusted their Soviet-designed machines, 125mm guns, low profiles, autoloaders that promised speed and efficiency. On paper, the T-72 was a predator, but paper does not survive contact with reality. As the American 2nd Armored Cavalry Regiment advanced, the Iraqis expected a close fight, 1 kilometer, maybe less. That was the range where their optics worked, where training mattered, where numbers could overwhelm. Instead, they were being killed by something they couldn't even see. Another Abrams halts, another thermal contact appears, another sabot round is chambered. This time, the Iraqi tank fires first. A flash, a 120mm shell streaks toward the Abrams and slams into its frontal armor. The impact rocks the vehicle, metal screaming, but the round shatters, defeated by Chobham composite armor, layers of steel, ceramics, and classified materials designed to break penetrators apart. Inside the Abrams, no one is injured. "They hit us," the driver says. The commander responds instantly, "Engage."
The return shot is devastating. The Iraqi tank detonates, flames roaring out of every hatch. Its autoloader, so praised for speed, becomes a death trap, ammunition cooking off in a violent chain reaction. Across the battlefield, this scene repeats again and again. T-72 crews try to maneuver. They try to close the distance. Some abandon their tanks and run. Others fire blindly into the smoke. Their night vision, primitive infrared systems can't compete. Their range finding is manual. Their rounds, often outdated, lack the penetration to matter. And worst of all, they don't understand how they are dying. From their perspective, tanks are simply exploding. Inside the Abrams, the crew works like a machine. Identify, range, fire, reload, move. Each engagement lasts seconds. The American tanks rarely come within 1,500 meters. Often they kill from farther. Distances Soviet doctrine considered unrealistic, impossible. One Iraqi officer, later captured, will say it felt like fighting ghosts. But this didn't begin in the desert. This began decades earlier, in Cold War design rooms, in gunnery ranges, in lessons learned from Vietnam and Europe. It began with an obsession, first-round hit probability. Tonight, that obsession is paying off in fire. As burning wrecks light the desert floor, Captain McMaster scans the horizon through his sights. More contacts, more heat signatures. The battle isn't over, and the Soviet-designed tanks that once inspired confidence are now becoming metal coffins, destroyed before their crews ever get a chance to fight.
The smoke from the oil fires thickens, turning the battlefield into a hellish twilight. To the naked eye, visibility is almost zero. To the Abrams AN/VSG-2 thermal imaging system, it is as clear as day. Inside his turret, Captain H.R. McMaster rotates the commander's independent thermal viewer. Heat blooms everywhere, wrecks cooling, fires raging, but he knows what to look for. Clean, angular shapes, sharp edges, engines still running. Multiple contacts, bearing 075. Across the line, Iraqi tank crews are panicking. Their optics show only darkness and fire. They swing turrets toward muzzle flashes that no longer exist. By the time they see anything, it is already too late. One T-72 crests a low ridge, its commander half exposed from the hatch, searching with binoculars. He never sees the Abrams that has already ranged him. Laser on. Range 1,980 meters. The Abrams fires. The sabot round strikes the T-72 square in the turret ring. The explosion is violent and instant. The commander vanishes in a flash of white heat. Nearby, another Iraqi tank tries to reverse. Its driver overcorrects, track slipping in soft sand. The tank bogs down, engine whining. The crew argues over the intercom. Should they abandon? Can they fight? A second Abrams answers for them. The round punches through the frontal glasses, shattering inside the fighting compartment. The autoloader carousel ignites. The tank erupts, turret blown clean off and thrown several meters away like a discarded helmet. Inside the American tanks, there is still no celebration, just discipline. Next target. The Iraqis attempt what Soviet doctrine demands, close the distance. T-72s surge forward in small groups, firing on the move. Green tracer streaks through the smoke. One round slams into an Abrams side skirt and explodes harmlessly. Another strikes a turret cheek and disintegrates. The Abrams keeps coming. Unlike the T-72, it doesn't need to stop to fire accurately. Its gun stabilizer keeps the crosshairs steady even as the tank moves at speed. The ballistic computer adjusts instantly for range, wind, barrel wear, and vehicle motion. The Iraqi gunners don't know this. They still believe in skill and instinct. They range by eye, they fire by feel. At 2,300 meters, one Abrams fires while moving. Hit. A T-72 explodes before its gunner even finishes squeezing the trigger. That moment, unseen by the Iraqis, barely acknowledged by the Americans, is the collapse of an entire armored philosophy. Elsewhere on the battlefield, a group of Iraqi tanks finally manages to return coordinated fire. 3 T-72s focus on a single Abrams. Their guns thunder almost simultaneously. The Abrams rocks violently as multiple impacts strike its armor. Dust and sparks fill the turret. Warning lights flash. "Status?" the commander snaps. "We're good," the driver shouts back. "No penetration." The Abrams doesn't retreat. It pivots. The gunner picks targets one by one. First shot, turret hit. Kill. Second shot, lower glacis. Kill. Third shot, center mass. The tank erupts in flame, its ammunition detonating in a catastrophic chain reaction. In less than 20 seconds, all 3 T-72s are burning wrecks. For the Iraqi survivors watching from cover, the message is unmistakable. Their tanks cannot win. By now, the battlefield is littered with shattered armor. Some Iraqi crews abandon perfectly functional tanks, fleeing into the darkness. Others surrender, hands raised, emerging from smoke and fire in stunned silence. They had laughed at the Abrams. They had been told it was fragile, that its armor was exaggerated, that Western crews lacked toughness. But what they encountered was not just a tank. It was a system. Training measured in thousands of rounds fired per crew. Night fighting practiced until it was routine. Maintenance standards drilled into muscle memory. Technology designed not to impress on paper, but to kill first, every time. And the T-72s are paying the price. As dawn begins to break, Captain McMaster surveys the battlefield through his optics. Dozens of destroyed enemy vehicles. No American tanks lost. Minimal damage. No penetrations. The myth of parity is gone. The Soviet tank legacy, exported, trusted, and feared for decades, has been shattered in a single night of fire and sand. But this wasn't luck, and it wasn't arrogance. It was the result of lessons learned the hard way, lessons written in the wreckage of past wars, lessons that will change armored warfare forever.
The Iraqi survivors stare at the battlefield in disbelief. Many of them are professionals, men who fought Iran for 8 brutal years. They had faced American-made equipment before. They had not faced this. Inside the Abrams, crews finally have time to breathe. The adrenaline fades, replaced by the quiet shock of how one-sided the fight has been. Captain H.R. McMaster dismounts briefly, boots crunching on glassy, heat-cracked sand. He looks at a destroyed T-72 up close. The armor is peeled open like a torn can. The penetration hole is small, almost clean, but the inside is scorched beyond recognition. Ammunition racks are gone. The turret ring is warped and blackened. This is not just a destroyed tank. This is the end of a doctrine. For decades, Soviet armored philosophy was built on assumptions. Wars would be fast, violent, and fought at close range. Tanks would swarm. Numbers would compensate for losses. Crews were trained to advance, fire, and accept casualties as the cost of breakthrough. The T-72 was born from that mindset. Low silhouette, autoloader instead of a fourth crewman, ammunition stored beneath the turret, cheap enough to build in the thousands, deadly if it could get close enough. But the desert of southern Iraq offers no forests, no hedgerows, no cities to hide behind. Here, range is king, and the Abrams owns the horizon. At 0600 hours, reports come in from across the line. Engagement after engagement tells the same story. T-72s destroyed at 2,000 to 2,500 meters. Some hit before they ever fired a shot.
others killed while attempting to maneuver, a few lucky enough to land hits, none achieving penetration. American tank commanders begin to realize something profound. They are fighting an enemy who physically cannot reach them. One crew recalls seeing Iraqi tank rounds spark harmlessly off Abrams armor, like rocks thrown at a bunker. In another engagement, an Iraqi tank fires repeatedly at an Abrams from under 1,000 meters. Every shot fails. The Abrams returns fire once. The T-72 disappears in flame. The Iraqi crew never escapes. By mid-morning, resistance collapses. Units that were supposed to counterattack are gone. Command structures disintegrate. Radios go silent. Entire formations surrender or melt away into the desert. Captured Iraqi officers are questioned. They speak of disbelief, of fear, of confusion. They say they were trained that American tanks could be beaten at close range, that their 12.5mm guns could penetrate Western armor, that night fighting would be limited, that thermal sights were rare. Every assumption was wrong. One officer admits quietly, "We never saw them. They saw everything." The truth is brutal but simple. The Abrams was not designed to be impressive. It was designed to survive first contact and then kill faster than anything else on the battlefield. Its composite armor, incorporating classified materials and depleted uranium inserts, defeats shaped charges and kinetic penetrators alike. Its 120mm M256 gun fires rounds capable of punching through steel at distances Soviet designers believed impractical. Its thermal imaging turns darkness, smoke, and sandstorms into irrelevant details. And most importantly, its crews are trained to exploit every advantage without hesitation. The T-72, by contrast, is unforgiving. One penetration means catastrophic kill. Ammunition stored in the autoloader ensures that a single hit often means instant death. This is not a flaw on paper. It is a death sentence in combat. As the battlefield quiets, American units begin recovery and assessment. Mechanics inspect tanks. Most damage is superficial: scratches, scorch marks, broken external fittings. No Abrams has been destroyed by enemy fire. The Iraqi armored force, once feared, is effectively annihilated. And somewhere, far from the desert, Soviet engineers and military analysts will eventually see the footage, the after-action reports, the kill ratios. They will understand what happened, but they will not laugh, because this battle proves something terrifyingly clear. The age of massed Soviet armor, once the nightmare of NATO planners, has just ended. And it ended at 2,000 meters in the smoke and sand of Iraq.
Within hours, the first hard numbers begin to circulate. They don't make sense. At division headquarters, intelligence officers stare at situation maps dotted with red markers, each one a destroyed Iraqi vehicle. The scale is staggering. Entire armored battalions erased in minutes. Engagement ranges far beyond anything Soviet doctrine considered practical. The phrase begins to spread through American units, half in disbelief, half in awe. It wasn't even a fight. Captured Iraqi tankers are processed and questioned. Many are still shaking. Some are angry. Others are numb. They describe the same moment again and again. They heard nothing. They saw nothing. Then their tank exploded. One former T-72 commander explained that his crew fired at least 4 rounds at an Abrams that was clearly visible in the firelight. Every round failed. When the return shot came, it arrived instantly and killed everyone but him. He survived only because his tank had already been damaged and he was outside the vehicle trying to fix a thrown track. He stares at the ground as he speaks.
"We were told the Abrams could not fight at night," he says quietly. "We were told wrong." Back in the American lines, tank crews finally have a moment to talk. They compare shots, ranges, hits. Some killed tanks at 2,500 meters, others closer, but always with the same result: first round, catastrophic kill. For many of them, the most shocking part isn't how effective the Abrams was, it's how helpless the enemy seemed. One gunner admits later it felt unfair. As reports move up the chain of command, the reality becomes unavoidable. The M1 Abrams has just delivered the most lopsided tank versus tank victory in modern warfare. U.S. forces destroy hundreds of Iraqi armored vehicles for 0 Abrams lost to enemy fire. Not damaged, not disabled, 0. For decades, Western planners feared waves of Soviet armor rolling through Europe, thousands of tanks overwhelming defenses through sheer mass. That fear dies in the desert, because mass doesn't matter if you die before you can fire effectively. Thousands of miles away, analysts begin reviewing footage captured by gun cameras and thermal sights. Frame by frame, they watch T-72s appear as bright shapes and vanish in flashes of white. The lesson is unmistakable. Technology didn't win this battle alone. Training did. Doctrine did. The Abrams crews weren't reacting, they were executing rehearsed procedures drilled into them over years of live fire exercises. They didn't panic under fire because they trusted their machine and, more importantly, each other. The Iraqi crews fought bravely, but bravery cannot compensate for blindness. Military observers around the world take notice. Armored forces that relied on older Soviet designs begin reassessing everything: optics, ammunition storage, night fighting capability, crew survivability. The myth that Western tanks were soft, overengineered, and unreliable is shattered in a single campaign. And the Abrams, once criticized for its weight, cost, and complexity, is suddenly understood for what it really is: a weapon designed to dominate, not trade blows. In the aftermath, one officer sums it up simply: "We didn't outnumber them, we didn't outmaneuver them, we just outranged, outsaw, and outshot them." And that is the most terrifying kind of superiority, because it leaves the enemy no room to adapt. The laughter that once followed the mention of the Abrams is gone, replaced by silence. Months later, the battlefield is cold. Burned-out hulks of T-72s still sit where they died, their turrets twisted, their armor split open. The desert has begun to reclaim them, sand piling against steel like a quiet burial. American crews rotate home. Some carry souvenirs, spent shell casings, fragments of enemy armor. Others carry something heavier: the memory of how decisively modern war can erase a force that believes outdated truths. The American Army studies every engagement in detail: gunnery tapes, thermal footage, radio logs. They confirm what the crews already knew. The Abrams didn't just win, it changed the rules. Across the world, military academies rewrite their lesson plans. Soviet-era assumptions are challenged openly for the first time. Analysts no longer ask how many tanks an army has. They ask how well those tanks can see, shoot, communicate, and survive. The answer, after 1991, is uncomfortable for many. Because the T-72 was not a failure of courage, it was a failure of design philosophy. Low cost meant compromised protection. Autoloaders meant exposed ammunition. Simplified optics meant blindness at range and at night. Training designed for mass warfare collapsed against precision. The Abrams, by contrast, was built for a different kind of fight, one where the first shot often decides everything. Former Iraqi tankers, interviewed years later, describe the moment their confidence died. Some say it was the first time they fired and saw nothing happen. Others say it was watching a tank vanish 2 kilometers away, hit by something they never saw or heard. One man says simply, "We were already dead, we just didn't know it yet." The story spreads beyond armored warfare. Air forces, navies, infantry planners. Everyone takes the same lesson. If you cannot see the enemy, you are already defeated. Thermals, sensors, communications, crew survivability. These become non-negotiable. Wars will still be brutal, still chaotic, but never again blind. The Abrams will go on to fight in other wars, against different enemies, under different conditions. It will be damaged, sometimes destroyed. No weapon is invincible. But that night in the desert remains unique. A moment when 2 armored philosophies met head-on, and one of them ended. The Soviet tankers laughed at the Abrams. Then it killed their T-72s from 2,000 meters away, not because it was louder, not because it was bigger, not because it was luckier, but because it saw first. And in modern war, that is everything.